Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspirational guest coming right up. Today our special guest is Michelle-Steinkeo-Baumgard, and she's here today to talk to us about her new book, Healthy Healing. Now, Michelle is an author for HarperCollins, speaker, fitness coach, mother, and remarried widow. After losing her husband, Mitch, in 2009, she turned to exercise as an outlet for grief. Michelle has been featured in Fitness Magazine, Shape Magazine, and has contributed to magazines for Prevention Magazine, the Huffington Post, and many other media outlets. So let's welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you here. And gosh, your book is so timely. I think there's a lot of people that go through a pain or a hurt or a grief. They're looking for ways out.
Absolutely. I mean, I think ultimately we all go through pain and grief in our life at some point or another. And if we can help equip each other with more healthy options for getting through the process. The book, ironically, is named Healthy Healing, and while I don't necessarily believe that you heal from grief, I feel like you have to go through it and you have to work your way through and within it. But I do think there are healthy ways to handle grief and the things that come with it.
Yeah, and how to move through all that. Well, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about your story and what started you on this path and becoming interested in healthy healing?
Well, ultimately what happened with me was, like so many people, I lived a pretty typical life, very busy with work, had 2 children. I had a great marriage, was very, very happy within all of that. My kids were healthy. My job was great. But I lost sight of myself, and I started becoming very unhealthy. And the further I kind of went down that rabbit hole of not taking care of me, putting myself last on the list, taking care of my kids, my husband, my job, all of those other things, I found myself very miserable. And so I kind of had this rock bottom moment in Cabo. I was there for work with my husband, and I had this epiphany, like I've got to start taking care of me, or none of the other stuff even matters. Because if you don't have your health and you don't have yourself, you can't give to everybody else. And it really, finally at age 35 or 36, I think it was, that was really resonating with me. So I went home from that trip and got very, very into fitness right away. The fitness part came very easily for me. And I immediately started feeling better. Within a week, I was feeling like my old self. Energy was coming back. I found that I was able to multitask in my day better. I was a better mother. I was a better wife. And so life was starting to kind of get on track. And I went through that for a couple of months and was, again, really just starting to feel human again. And then the bottom dropped out, and my husband was killed on October 9th, 2009 in a small plane crash. And, I joke, I say this every time I go give a speech or I talk on the radio. Before this happened in my life, I could stub my toe wrong and I would quit a fitness program. It was just the first thing to go in my life. And for whatever reason, the next morning when I came downstairs and friends were calling relatives to let them know what had happened, all I could hear in my head was, whatever you do, don't quit on your fitness. It's really, really important. And so I made a commitment to myself right then and there that I was all in on taking care of myself from that moment forward.
Well, I applaud you because people go through heartaches and difficult times, and especially as a mom and everything's on you and you're like, gosh, what am I going to do now? I think most people would feel like, hey, it's okay to give up and to not move forward. And I'm sure there are many days that probably felt like that was the thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. And knowing that I could go into the gym or on a run or, do something active and physical, I made the connection early on in my grief that I felt better. And I certainly never took away my grief. It certainly never fixed what was going on in my life, but it empowered me, and it gave me, that oomph to get through a really difficult, challenging day. And then I knew that I had to go back to that spring every single day and get that, what I needed to help me get through those tough times.
Yeah. Well, when you started, because you had started your workout program, you didn't quit, and you continued with it, I mean, I think a lot of people, probably want to hear, how you did that, especially when there are some days you probably don't even feel like getting out of bed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all handle grief so differently. I know we all do. And one of the things that happened with me was there was severe shock. My husband was killed in a plane crash. So my body really, really protected itself with a lot of shock. Mm-hmm. And I found within my workouts, I found community, which I think is vitally important. I think it's something we're missing. We have so much social media and we're so connected in so many ways, but yet we're missing community. And I found a community. I found that empowerment. I found energy. And there's so many different things that you go through with grief, anger being one of them. And I found that it was a great place for me to have an outlet for that anger. I could go on a long run and scream or cry. I could lift heavy weights and get those emotions out in ultimately a healthy way. And what I always tell people is I'd come home and I would think, okay, I can do this solo parenting thing for 24 more hours. I can get through it. So I really willed myself early on that, laying in bed was ultimately not going to make me feel better. There were certainly days where I did lay in bed, and I always tell people, you've got to be where you are, and I never want to make anyone who's grieving feel like laying in bed is the wrong choice. But at the end of the day, if you can get up and even go for a 10-minute walk, it doesn't have to be an hour at the gym. It doesn't have to be, I trained for a marathon. It doesn't have to be that. You can walk outside, take a bunch of cleansing deep breaths, walk for 5 to 10 minutes, and go lay back in bed. But ultimately, I know you're going to feel better even after that 10 minutes by just doing that simple action. There's that connection of putting one foot in front of the other, and it helps us move forward in life in so many ways.
Now, I know in your book you talk about some of the myths of grieving. Why don't you share a few of those with our listeners? I know you kind of touched on like one or two of them already, but
it was funny. Somebody mentioned to me the other day that they just love that part of my book, that that was one of their favorite parts. And I said, well, originally I think I had about 50 myths in there, and Harper One asked me to trim it back. There's so many myths to grieving, and I think we're so stunted as a culture dealing with grief. We aren't taught how to deal with it. We all go through it. We all, we're all have our own mortality. The people we love do as well, but we're never taught how to be equipped with it or how to deal with it. So many people think that you go through something like this, and after year one, you're better, you're okay. Mm-hmm. And for so many grieving people, and I certainly can't speak for everyone, but I'll speak for myself, year two was harder for me than year one because I was in so much shock year one. I didn't even really feel anything until 6 to 8 months after his plane crash because I was just in so much shock. So year two was harder. People think that you need them the minute something like this happens, and you do. But ultimately, I think you need them more in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, because people all go back to their normal life, and you're left, holding the bag and wondering how you continue to move forward, and you need that support and that love even more in the months to follow. Another myth is I remarried in 2014, and a lot of people think that once you're remarried, you shouldn't talk about or revisit the person who passed before that person. And I think that's one of the saddest things about our culture. I honor my late husband. I love him. And just the fact that I'm willing to say I love him bothers a lot of people because they think somehow that diminishes my love for my current husband, Keith. And it doesn't. They're two solely different human beings, and neither one is mutually exclusive or replaceable. So I have full love in my heart for Keith. I have full love in my heart for Mitch. They're not the same human. Mitch is no longer here. And that is something that, like I said, it really bothers people. And I've noticed on the Internet especially, it really strikes a controversial chord. So I could go on and on about grief.
Yeah, well, and
that's you.
Well, it's kind of a curious point, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I mean, because you look at it, you have children, with your late husband, and so of course you're going to talk about, just life and how much you loved him and have that love in your heart, and I don't think it has to be like, oh, I only love this person and that's it. You can have love for your husband that's passed and the current husband, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, yeah. But this is one of the many things that we we have this idea about grief, and we put it in this neat, I always call it the grief box, this neat little grief box that everyone's supposed to fit into. And everybody doesn't fit into the same box, and there's so many things that we don't give due credit to when it comes to grief.
Yeah. Well, and I really think that there hasn't been enough discussion around it, so people do have sometimes this, like it has to fit within this box, kind of what grief would look like in order for a person to be grieving, otherwise they're not, you know. They just don't, they don't understand that it comes in many different shapes and sizes.
Well, I think in so many ways it comes from the goodness of people's hearts. They want us to be okay. They want us to be fixed. And so often, you know, we want to control this situation with people that we love, and you can't control grief. You can't control what it looks like, what it feels like, how long a person is in the heaviest parts of grief. You can't control any of that. And for an outsider looking in to not be able to control or fix you, I think in some cases is very difficult for people who aren't going through the middle of the grief storm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and regardless what the grief is about, I mean, it could be a divorce, it could be losing a job, a pet, a loved one. I mean, there's many different forms of grief, and so, you know, and you probably intended this for when you wrote this book, how how healthy healing would be just for anybody that's going through grief.
Absolutely. In fact, I talked about that early in the book, that while throughout the book I was going to be referring to death, and that was certainly my personal situation, grief does come in a whole lot of forms. Like you said, divorce, financial difficulties, losing a job, losing yourself, like I had done before my husband passed, where I had really lost touch with myself and who I was, and I was going through a period of grief over that. So yes, and I think what I talk about in this book, it really applies to anyone in any stressful, difficult situation in their life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love the myths. I mean, we're not going to go through all of them here because obviously we want people to pick up their own copy of Healthy Healing. But I love the myths that you had, and quite a few of them kind of struck a chord with me. I'm like, gosh, that is so true. It's because people do kind of get stuck, and this approaches it at many different ways. So no matter where you are, you can really feel okay with where you're at in the process, not like it should be this or it has to look like that. So I applaud you for that. That was a great job on just being able to be more inclusive with everybody.
Well, and that's what I hear a lot from people is, me being willing to write it and say it, it normalizes other people's feelings. And, whether it's grief or whether it's body image issues, whatever it is, having somebody kind of out in the forefront saying, this is how I feel and this is how a lot of other people feel, and it's not a bad thing. It's kind of normal, or at least, normal per the individual. I try not to cast a wide net on anything ever. But there's a lot of people who have these feelings, and again, it's just normalizing them.
Yeah. So let's say someone, they picked up your book and they're going, okay, I've gotten out of bed, I'm able to kind of move forward. What are some ways they can start incorporating exercise into their everyday life?
Well, first of all, I make it non-negotiable for myself. So every day I kind of give myself a list of 3 to 5 things that have to be done, because otherwise life gets very, very overwhelming for anyone, especially if you're grieving. So on the top of my list is always me, because I know for a fact that if I take care of me, everything else is going to be better in my day. So whether that means I go for an hour at the gym, I take a class, I go for a walk. It doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing proposition, and it doesn't have to be an hour, 2-hour proposition. I know people have time constraints, but it just literally starting with a 10-minute walk is good enough. And people need to congratulate themselves when they take those forward steps. One of the things I ask on my social media every day is, tell me one positive step you did for your life today, just one. That way it's not overwhelming, and it can be that 10-minute walk. Certainly food and nutrition play a big role, and again, there's little things people can do. It doesn't have to be that they up and became a vegan today. It can be that they drank more water and at lunch made a choice to have more, green vegetables rather than fried food. It can be really small choices that ultimately end up changing your mood, changing your overall energy level, and they snowball. A body in motion stays in motion. When you're eating healthier and you're putting more nourishing food into your body, you have this desire to continue on that road. So little small steps. In my book, I talk about a ton of different forms of exercise that people should consider. When we're just talking about grief, I know for me, different periods of my grief journey required different types of exercise. So early on, running was super therapeutic for me. It was that putting one foot in front of the other. It was running maybe away from something and towards something. It was very empowering, and it was very cathartic for me early on. And then later in my journey, I found that weightlifting was something that really spoke to me. And then still later after that, it was yoga and things that were more reflective. So I think knowing where you're at and what you need, and knowing that that could change literally by the day. One day you may need to go for a walk or a run, and one day you may need to go for yoga. So being open to listening to yourself and your own body and knowing what you may need is really key.
And I know you touched on nutrition a little bit and wanted to talk with you about that, because I loved how in your book you talk about fat loss, not weight loss. And a lot of times people get hung up on the scale. I mean, and it's so liberating to sometimes get rid of those things, you know?
Absolutely. In fact, with my trading company, I tell all my clients to get rid of their scale, because your scale is just your relative relationship with gravity. You know, there's nothing it tells you, that number, there's nothing it tells you that's of any value. It doesn't tell you if you're healthy inside. It doesn't tell you how much energy you have, how good of a parent or how good of an owner of a business you are. It doesn't tell you any of those things. But if your goal in the gym is to live a bigger life, I always tell people, don't think about diminishing the size of your body. Think about growing the size of your life. And if that's your ultimate goal, is to be able to hike with your family, or be able to, do some big adventure you've always wanted to do, or maybe it's just to get through the day without feeling like you need a nap. Those are goals that I think in the long run, especially as we age and mature, they become more, something that we relate to and want to continue on the path of. I know for me, I'll be 45 in December, and, wearing a size whatever dress is not nearly as big a motivator to me as what mountain can I climb.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I mean, I'm in Colorado, and being able to, I did a trip with some girlfriends a while back where we hiked down Pikes Peak. That's a 14er. And so it was kind of like, wow, I'm not sure if the mountain beat us or we beat the mountain at the end, but we did it,
Yeah, no, I climbed a 14er this summer, and, I think back to my childhood and what my mom could do at 45, and I don't remember her doing big stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I hope to inspire my kids that age is just a number. The scale is just a number, and those numbers don't define us as human beings. We need to define ourselves and live the life we want to live. And fitness helps you ultimately live the life you want to live, especially if we can wrap our minds around I'm making this choice to go work out today because, when I'm 80, I want to get on the floor and play with my grandkids.
Mm-hmm. Be able to just have a more active life all the way around. And I think that's something a lot of people are striving for. Maybe they, sometimes they just feel like they get stuck and then they don't know how to get out.
Yeah, and I think fitness and nutrition and all of that in general, it's so overwhelming. I think it always has been, but with social media, I feel like it's become really overwhelming because there's always the new fad diet, or there's always the, you must do this exercise program, where really I wish people would understand it is if they're consistent and they're dedicated to one thing, whether it's their walking program, their Zumba program, their weightlifting program, I don't care. It will all work if you're consistent and you have a joy in your heart for doing it. If you don't love the exercise you're doing it, don't do it because you're not going to stick with it if you dread it. I love lifting weights. I love going into the gym, putting my earphones up, and listening to music and getting lost in what I'm doing for an hour. It's a pure joy in my heart. But other people may absolutely dread that. So for them, maybe they need to go swimming. And once you find that thing that makes you feel alive, and I always say, makes you realize you have a fire inside yourself, and it stokes that fire for life, then you've got your thing, and you can grow with it.
Well, and I agree with you so much because there are some things that I enjoy doing more so than others. And maybe it could be like, everybody's kind of that way, that maybe it could be like someone's always wanted to do yoga, and so they pick that up because that can, be very beneficial as far as exercising goes as well. Or
and there's so many cool benefits that we didn't have 20 years ago. If you've got anxiety to go into a new yoga studio, you can do it at home. There's apps, there's programs where you can bring it into your home, and you can spend 3 months, doing it at home, getting comfortable with the different yoga positions, and then find yourself going into a yoga studio, because ultimately I'm a huge believer in that community. So if you could lock yourself in with some sort of community, yoga, CrossFit, we do one through our training program, and we find that the community is the most successful part of it because they lift each other up and they bring that accountability. But then you're also surrounded with like-minded people who want the same things out of life that you do, which help push you forward.
And it makes it so much more fun when you're in a yoga class. And I'm picking on yoga because I like doing yoga. You're in a yoga class and you have someone that's just turned themselves into a pretzel at the front of the class, and you're like, well, that's not going to happen. But you can take it on. You can take your journey. And whatever the practice is, it could be rock climbing, it could be, weights, it could be whatever, just that you're able to take it just a step further each time, and it could be in stretching or swimming or whatever the case is.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's definitely a growth. And I think one of the things I have people do in my book is journal how they feel. We get so caught up with journaling our food and all these other things, and there's value in that. But to actually go for a walk or a run, and then 15 minutes later after you've come home, write down how you feel, honestly. Do you have more energy? Do you find that you're less sad or less emotional? Again, I'm not ever here to say that grief or stress or trauma is fixable by just going for a walk. But it certainly is a tool that I hope at some point is the first thing grief counselors and first responders tell people is that you need to move. You need to move your body, because the more you move your body, the more your brain is flooded with positive chemical and endorphins and serotonin. And again, you don't have to beat your body down to get these positive benefits. You can go for a walk and start there.
Yeah. Well, you touched on something at the beginning of the show that I'd like for you to expand on when you talked about you come first. And sometimes people do have a hard time just carving out things in their schedule. But when you make it like, this is something that I'm doing no matter what, it changes everything.
It does. Yeah, no, it does. And it's such a hard thing for any of us to wrap our heads around. We feel like, as a mom, I'll just speak for myself, that when I take time for me, sometimes I feel selfish, like, oh, my kids should be coming first right now. And my daughter has watched me over the years. When her dad passed, she was just 2 weeks from turning 3. So she has watched me use fitness as a coping mechanism for, 8 years now. And when I'm having a bad day and I'm stressed and I'm grumpy and whatever's going on, she'll look at me and she'll say, Mom, you need to go to the gym. Because he knows that when I come back, I'm a better mom. I'm more patient. I'm more understanding. I have less time with them, but I have much better quality time that I do have. The quality is better. And that goes for what I do for a living, especially now. It went for what I did for a living back when my husband passed. I was in charge of $300 million worth of real estate with my previous job, and I would be so overwhelmed post-grief that I would open up the spreadsheet and I couldn't even delineate down to any details. It all grayed. No. It just kind of went gray for me. So what I learned early on is that I'd go for a run and then I'd sit down immediately at my desk to do my work, and it would make sense. It would click because I had a 2 to 3 hour window there where my brain functioned better. So I think if we can wrap our heads around the fact that it's not selfish, you're actually doing everyone in your life a favor. And I like to turn it on its head and say, okay, think of the person in the world you love the most. Maybe, it's a spouse, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a parent, a best friend. How much you love them. Would you not want them to be their healthiest, most mentally, physically, emotionally? And of course you would. Of course you'd want that for the person you love most in the world. Well, that's how the people who love you most feel about you. So you taking time for you is absolutely imperative.
Yeah. And it allows you, like how you're saying about your daughter, it just allows you to be there just in a more present way. And then what's great is that, I mean, she's obviously learning that these are ways, healthy ways of handling stress is going and working out and using that as an outlet.
Yeah, no, I've always told her, one of the things I've always told her since she was little is Mommy's going to the gym to get strong. And she still says that phrase to this day. I've never once equated the gym to my weight, the way I look, because to me those are all secondary. Those are all way down the line of why I go. Truly, first and foremost, it's mental and emotional therapy for me, because I go in there and I could be stressed about something I need to write, a deadline I have, whatever. And I walk out and I feel like, I got that. What was I stressed about that for? So it is just really one of the most empowering things we can do for ourselves, but yet we put it so low on our priority list.
Well, and I love how you talk about, just making sure that you've also gotten your why for, you've got to write down your why as far as being, going to the gym and doing all that. And I loved how you positioned it in a different perspective, because a lot of times when people do go to the gym, they're like, well, I ate too much, or, I was out drinking with the girls last night, or whatever it is. I mean, there's always it usually does have a negative connotation when you talk to most people, about why are they going to the gym? And if you join the gym, a lot of times they'll ask you, well, what's your, I think the last time I joined one, they asked me something like, so what's bringing you in every day? And it's like, well, I'm going to hurt you if you ask me that question again.
Yeah, no, people have exactly, you hit the nail on the head. People have a negative connotation associated with working out instead of a positive one. It's, I have to. I have to do this because of what I ate. I have to do this because of what I drank. Instead of I get to, and I'm healthy and able-bodied enough to have this benefit in my life. One of my favorite stories I love to tell clients is I was training for a bodybuilding competition in Arizona, and I was complaining to myself. This was after my loss, and, I was very into fitness, but I was complaining because it was leg day. I didn't want to go do legs. Legs are my least favorite thing to train, and my coach at the time was a heck of a leg coach. She broke them down bad. So I was complaining to myself, and I was walking into the gym, complaining and bitching, that negative going through your head like crazy, which is making everything worse, of course. And in front of me rolls a guy in his wheelchair. And he checks in at the front desk, and I watched him, and he went over to the pull-up machine, and a couple of guys helped him, and he starts to bang out 10 pull-ups in his wheelchair. And I just stopped dead in my tracks. How dare I sit there and complain? I'm able-bodied, strong enough to walk in there and go train something that guy would give anything to train. And so I think we get so wrapped up in I have to do this, or, oh, boo-hoo, instead of just saying I get to do this, and I get to be strong, and I get to be healthy. And at the end of the day, nothing you do in the gym is going to outdo what you did in the kitchen. I try and get that through my clients' heads all the time. Your eating is 80% of the size of your body at the end of the day. So think of it as I always tell my clients, the kitchen is the chance to decide the size of your body, and the gym is the place where you decide the overall sculpting of your body and the composition of your body, the amount of muscle mass that you have on your body. And what an amazing opportunity to go in there and just make yourself strong, both mentally and physically.
And what a great way to put that, too, because, the kitchen is where it all goes down, so it's like, are you going to go for something that's, probably just easy to grab, or maybe take a few minutes and make a salad and have something that's a little bit more nutritious, because you can't expect
especially when you're going through grief. Sorry.
No, you're right. Because then it's like you're just looking for things that are going to kick in your endorphins,
Right. Well, people that are going through grief, usually there's two reactions with food. They either stop eating, which is what I did, and it wasn't intentional. I was just so I was so grief-stricken, and food didn't hold any appeal to me at all. And so they call it the widow diet. You know, I lost a tremendous amount of weight very quickly because I had no appetite. And then the other is people going to the refrigerator looking for love and looking for that comfort. And so, you know, I wish I could get people to understand food is just food. It's not good or bad. And we ultimately, so many times, especially women, we starve ourselves thinking that we're going to lose weight or we're going to somehow make ourselves happy because we're thinner, rather than understanding that you may lose weight when you don't eat, but you're going to hold on to fat. So you're actually less healthy. Your body is now composed of more fat. And whereas if you actually fed your body nutritiously, you'd have better energy. You would have better emotional stability. And ultimately, your body is going to be comprised in a much more strong and healthy way. So I want to get people eating. I want to get them eating well. It doesn't mean you have to eat nothing but salads. I always tell people, don't give up the food you love. Just get better food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I mean, it's either going to fuel your body or it's not, you know?
Right. Exactly.
Well, and I know that in your book you also talk about, you know, the importance of sleep. So, I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about that over time, but why don't you share with us your thoughts on this? Because I think it's important to hear how this all relates.
Yeah. Well, sleep is critical to our mental well-being and our physical well-being, of course. And I always say, think of your fitness as a stool. You know, you've got the fitness end of it, you've got the nutrition end of it, and you've got the rest end of it. And if you don't have the rest, the stool topples over. And especially when you're going through grief, sleep is really hard to come by. I know for months I was awake nearly the entire night. And, you know, here's what the vicious cycle that happens, and I talk about it in my book, at least for a lot of grievers.
Yeah.
You're stressed all day. You're exhausted. You are mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted. So you barely get through the day. You're wanting to lay down the whole time. And then it comes to nighttime where you're actually supposed to sleep, and your brain goes crazy and you can't sleep. So you go through life as this zombie, especially when you're grieving. And one of the things fitness and a good nutritious diet can help with is rest. So if you're putting in, you know, a reasonable amount to get yourself, you know, that physical exertion during the day, you have a better chance of sleeping at night. Again, with nutrition, if you're putting in good quality nutrition, you're putting in sugar from fruit, not all the other places we get sugar. You're putting in good vegetables. You're doing those kinds of things. You're getting outside in nature so that you're getting some vitamin D and the melatonin is working in your system. All of those things combined are going to help you rest. I'm not saying, again, it's going to be perfect. Grieving and rest, it's so difficult. But if you don't get off the hamster wheel and you start getting in a more healthy cycle, it takes a lot longer to recover from, I think, in the rest department.
Yeah, and then you're kind of just fighting, you know, with every day that goes by, you're just fighting to be able to manage, and then you get irritable and all those things happen. I mean, you're just wearing yourself down.
I think that the grief is compounded as well. I mean, when you're exhausted on top of everything else, then everything else seems really, I mean, not that it can seem worse when somebody you love dies or you're going through really traumatic, stressful times in your life. I know, you know, not having rest doesn't actually make it worse, but it makes it feel like it's worse.
Yeah.
So if you can get some fair amount of sleep, even, you know, 4 or 5, 6 hours, it can make all the difference. And then you can get that workout in the next day. Then you're on a positive path forward. You still have to grieve. You still have to work through it. You still have to, you can't just, as the person who gave me the news about my husband, you can't numb the pain. You have to live it, experience, survive it, and then you'll be okay.
Yeah, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because then you end up developing, and you talk about this in your book, a new normal.
Yeah. And that's hard for people. You know, in the first couple of years, you don't want a new normal. You want your old normal, and that's completely understandable. But at some point, you have to come to grips with the fact that the old normal is not there anymore, and it's not an option. So I believe that by taking positive steps forward every single day, even if it's just that walk, it doesn't have to be big, you work yourself towards that new normal, and you have positive energy in your life in really negative times. So, you know, again, if you can just choose nutritious food. You can go for a walk or do some kind of exercise. You can find a community to embrace you, a positive community to embrace you. I think a lot of grievers go to a very negative community, and you've got a bunch of very bitter people who are in this stuck place. And I think that while grief certainly takes time, and you can take all the time you need, and I always compare it to having your seasons. You may be in the season of summer and then find yourself in this deep winter. It's okay to have your season as long as you're continuing to take those small steps every day to move through it.
Yeah, and you're making little steps by little steps just to kind of move through it. And that's such great advice, because people do get in this place where it's like, gosh, when is this going to end, Yeah,
it doesn't end. And I think that's one of the things I'd love to get out there about grief is it doesn't end. So my late husband died. That's with me forever. Now, that doesn't mean that I get up every day and I dwell on it and I'm miserable and I'm sad. If I'm being honest, I think about him every day. More times often than not, 8 years out, everything I think is very happy. I think of good things. But that's not every day of my life. There are days where, especially with my kids, it's a struggle. But it's not something that I'm 5 years out or 6 years out and, you snap your fingers and it's like, oh, that's gone. No, It's forever with you when you lose a parent, when you lose a child, when you lose a spouse, when you lose a friend. That's forever with you. And when we can get to that place as a society to say it's forever with somebody, it's changed who they are, and that's okay, then I think we will have come a long ways.
Yeah, without a doubt. Because, and as we talked about at the beginning of the show, everyone grieves in their own way. So being able to just honor that and being where you are, but then looking for healthy ways to kind of make the walk through it easier, just for not only for yourself but those around you, is such a huge benefit. Yeah,
no, there's definitely I think we've done ourselves a disservice because we don't talk about healthy ways to cope. And there are a lot of healthy ways to cope beyond even what I'm talking about. Obviously, my interest has always been fitness and nutrition and things like that. But there's community. That's a huge one, obviously. There's art therapy. There's, equine therapy. There is, you can name a myriad of different ways, writing, journaling, where people can really find healthy ways to cope with their grief. And I think we spend so much time focusing on a lot of the negative and not enough time directing people from the get-go into more positive outlets for their grief.
So I know you do coaching. When you do coaching, is it more on the fitness level with people to work them through like a fitness program? What does your coaching look like?
Yeah, so we do fitness coaching. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't really go in that realm of the world beyond some really just very simple life homework that we give people that I feel applies to fitness and to life in general. So the company I run, My One Fit Life, we focus on fitness. And I would say 50 to 70% of our clients are widowed or grieving in some way. But we do have a large amount of our clients who aren't. They are just going through other stuff. And it's been so interesting to me. I was hesitant at first. Do I need to have a solid grief community, or do I need to have this open to everyone? And I decided, very purposely to go and have it open to everyone. And I'm glad I did, because I will have people come to me. We do a lot of what we call adventure weekends where all of our community gets together. And they'll say to me, I'm not grieving, but I feel so blessed to be in the midst with these people who are, because they've taught me to live more purposefully, and they've taught me to appreciate the little things. And then I'll have a griever come to me and say, this person, hasn't experienced a loss, but they're such a blessing to our community. They've taught me so much. So I think it's worked out really well. And I think the more as a human race we can understand that life is difficult. I talk about that in my book. It was something my dad used to say to me from the time I was a kid. It comes from Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. And it's one of the first things in the book. Life is difficult. And once you accept that life is difficult for everybody, it no longer is difficult. It's what it is. What it is. So if we're here to support each other and help each other, what a better world it can be.
Without a doubt. And, I love how you've made your passion something that can help people move forward through their grief as well, so it's something that you take that you're very passionate about. You've got your My One Fit Life where people can connect with you. And do you work with people from a virtual standpoint, or they have to be local?
No, we work virtually with them. So we work with people all over the world. And then, of course, like I said, we run these adventure weekends, and in some cases there are weeks. We just got back from Bali where we took 30 people to Bali for a week. And we had people there from Australia, New Zealand, and, of course, the States, Canada. So we work with people virtually online, and then we try and give them ways to get together in person. The other thing we do is I have a nonprofit called Live the List Nonprofit, and what we do with that is we help fund some kind of a dream for a widowed person. And in this case, the nonprofit is solely for grieving people. But what we do is, people who maybe they can't move forward with their life, or they don't feel like they can move forward with their life till they've accomplished X. We help them accomplish that, whether we help them financially, we help, train them, whatever it may be. We've helped fund vacations for a widowed mom who, she's got 2 jobs. She just can't take her child away. And, sometimes just having that opportunity to do nothing for a week and just be is so huge, because you've got people in these grieving situations who financially just were thrown to the wolves, and they have to work 3 days after they've laid their person to rest. And we want to just give people a chance to just go decompress and have some downtime. Or maybe we have one woman who couldn't afford to fly her late husband's ashes to his final resting place, and she didn't feel like she could move forward with her life till she made that happen. So we helped pay her way to do that. So I have a big passion for our nonprofit. I'm super proud of the work it's doing, and, we get to do some fun stuff, too. There's people that are wanting to climb big mountains, and we help make that happen for them, too.
And where can people learn more about your nonprofit? Is that on your website?
So they can go to livethelistnonprofit.org, and that is our nonprofit website. You can also find it on my blog, One Fit Widow. There's a link to it, as well as our training website. And
then they can figure out how they either want to donate or get involved, or all the above.
Yeah, no, we definitely love donations. We're 100% donor-driven there, and you could actually apply for a sponsorship or scholarship at that website as well. So if there's somebody listening who has a dream, they really need help, financial assistance making it happen, please apply. We're always looking for great people to help.
Well, and I know in your book, Healthy Healing, you talk about honoring the person you lost. What are some, and we talked about initially at the beginning of the show, just some ways that can take place. And I just would like for you to kind of share a little bit with our listeners on that.
Yeah, well, it was always a very personal thing for me. My late husband, Mitch, was a super happy, fun-loving guy. He loved life, and he had this big life list that he wanted to accomplish, especially with his kids. So I remember feeling in the first couple of weeks after he passed, well, that's over. I can't make that happen because it's just me and my kids were 13 months and nearly 3. So I was so overwhelmed by it all. And then just a few weeks later, with the help of the gym, I had this, this fire inside of me. No, I'm not going to give up on life. I'm not going to give up on his dreams. I'm not going to give up on my dreams. So I started completing bucket list adventures in his honor. And that became a very cathartic, healing thing for me as well, because on the anniversary of his death every year, instead of sitting in my room being very sad, I go do something in his honor. I've hiked the Grand Canyon. I've hiked Mount Snuffles in Colorado, the Nepali coast. And again, I know that's not feasible for everyone. It doesn't have to be big things like that. It can be that you take a day that's tragic and sad, and you spend it with your loved ones. Maybe you throw a little party. I don't know, but there are so many ways we could honor joyfully the people who went before us. And I think by doing that, for a lot of people, it's a very healthy thing, especially when you have others that join you. They tell you great stories about the person that went before. I always love hearing about him, what he did from people. So I think there's a million ways we can honor our loved ones. And I think when we get to that place within our grief where it's such a cliche. They'd want you to be happy. And, God, I hated hearing that early on. I think everybody does. But it's true. I mean, I know for me, I look at my children, and I think, if anything happened to me, would I not want them to have the very best life possible? Of course I would. So I use that with myself and with Mitch. He would want me and his kids to have the best life, and so that's what we do.
Yeah, and that's the best way to honor is being able to move forward and have a happy life.
Yeah, it's. I think it's accepting that your life is going to be different, and I know that's hard. I speak from experience that that's hard, but finding that peace in what you have, and another thing that I talk about in my book that I know is really helpful for people is gratitude, just practicing gratitude for what you still have in your life. And when you start practicing gratitude, some days it's hard, especially when you're going through a lot of bad stuff in your life. You can sit down and say, okay, I'm going to think of 3 things I'm grateful for. And I've had days where I've struggled. I can't think of 3 things, and I'm embarrassed to say that, but there's just those days, right? We all have them. And then once you think of one thing, then you quickly think of another, and then you quickly think of another, and then it's like somebody opened the floodgates. You realize, I'm thankful for my ability to walk, to hear, to see, that my kids are healthy, that I have a roof over my head, and it comes so fast and furious. So once you focus on gratitude, it becomes tenfold. If you focus on the negative, that becomes tenfold.
Yeah. And that is such a true thing. I mean, my goodness, if you really are looking for the little miracles, they do show up. Everything can be one then. So,
absolutely.
Well, and so what are some final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, gosh, final thoughts.
I know, really. I mean, because we covered so much.
I think one of the big things for me is owning your life. Knowing that you can't control everything that happens in your life. You can't control all the bad. I know just thinking back to some of the tragedies that have happened in our country in the last couple of weeks, and you can't control everything that's going on around you, but you can control yourself. I'm a big believer in free will. I'm a big believer in you defining you. I write about that all the time. But I know that I hope everyone who hears my voice can know that they have the power to live their best life possible. It won't be perfect. That it may not be what you planned, but you can still build a beautiful life. And that if you can make smart, positive choices day in, day out, it will build, and you will look back a year from now and say, I can't believe how far I've come. I can't believe how much I've grown, how much happier I am. So understanding that you define that, you can choose that, and then understanding that it affects the smallest people among us. I know for me, when Mitch first died, why I did what I did was 100% based off my children. I didn't want them to, obviously I couldn't control that their dad was now gone, but I could control that I wasn't gone. I could control that they didn't lose me too. And when I say lose me, I don't mean physically, because I can't control that. But I can control if I've checked out emotionally. I can control if I've checked out day in and day out. And so I was hoping to show them that I was choosing positive, steps forward. And so it's a ripple effect. When you make those positive changes for yourself, even small ones, it's going to affect the other people in your life that you love.
And it makes everything so easy. So if you, the best you can do is going out for a walk, and you plan every day that you're going to go for a walk, regardless, what's going on around you, you get these little bits that make you feel better, that then you're like, okay, well, you get it to a point where you're like, well, now I'm going to add, going to the gym or doing yoga or doing rock climbing or whatever the case is, you add something else to that list of what you're doing, and you just keep feeling better and better.
Yeah, and I always call it baby steps. You take enough baby steps, your baby steps get bigger and bigger. I'm not here to tell anyone they have to leap. If you want to leap, great. As long as you can sustain your leap, that's fine. I'm good with it. But baby steps work. They absolutely work if you just keep applying them day after day. Again, you'll look back a year from now and go, I can't believe how far I've come. I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah, and before you know it, I mean, you've accomplished so much, It's just doing a little bit at a time. And and your book is, like, again, I say, it was so timely because, I mean, I've come across so many people that have had some type of grief going on in their life, and they just don't know how to move forward and how to take those baby steps and walk out of that grief, and then what to replace it with, What can I do when, like how you talked about writing, how that was so cathartic. I mean, a lot of times it can be just amazing because you're just out there and you're getting all that frustration, hurt, whatever out, until you stop.
Well, and I think we underestimate the things in life that will make us feel so much better. We underestimate being outside. People don't get enough outside time anymore. We're always in a building under fluorescent lights. And just stepping outside, I'm blessed to live in Montana where I have a lot of outside. But, even going to a park in the city, taking in the fresh air with deep breaths and feeling a little bit of sunshine on your skin, oh, my goodness, it can turn your whole day around. And music, there's just so many little things we can do, but we have to choose them.
Mm-hmm. And, getting your book, Healthy Healing, is, I think, the first step in making that choice and moving forward and, also being part of your community. So, Michelle, why don't you share with us your website again where people can connect with you and sign up for your newsletter and be part of your community?
Okay, well, my blog is probably the first one. It's just onefitwidow.com. And on there they can get on my newsletter. They can read a lot of my past blogs. If they're interested in working with our training community, it's fitlife.com. And then finally, if they would like some help through our nonprofit, it's livelilistnonprofit.org.
Or if they'd like to donate to your nonprofit, they can do that there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's always great. Yeah, it's always so great to be able to have these resources, but also, I mean, they have to be funded somehow. And so it's nice when people, if they feel called to, they can donate to these things. And it's like, come on, let's kind of keep this moving. So.
Well, and it's amazing. Speaking of baby steps, it's amazing what a donation and helping one widowed person can do for their whole life and their children. It just brings tears to my eyes, some of the letters we get from people we've been able to help. And it's amazing what just a small act of kindness from somebody else will do to help that person course correct and change their whole life.
And move forward, yeah. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today. My goodness, what an inspirational book. And I just highly suggest everyone go get their own copy, especially with the holidays coming. They can buy these as gifts.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and for reading the book and getting it out there. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Michelle. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you. For our listeners, if there's anyone you're still looking for that last-minute gift and they're going through a difficult time, Healthy Healing will make the perfect gift for anyone this holiday season. So we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.